I'm going to go ahead and get started. Do a quick recap. All right, today we're going to do decorating with fresh greens, porch pots, and more. So we'll be talking a lot about fresh cut greens and how to use them around your home, inside your home, on the front porch. Specifically, I'm going to be making some porch pots, which is one of my favorite things to do because it's super, super easy. It's fail-safe. I mean, you really can't mess it up. And it's just a great way to use nature and use what nature provides to decorate for the holiday season. If you are missing that fragrance, maybe you've converted to a Lifelike tree, then you might be missing that fragrance of the holidays with the natural conifer kind of fragrance, that citrusy, piney fragrance that you get with all your conifers. And so if you are, then it's a great thing to use some of our local native conifers or come in and purchase some cut greens as well to use around your home for the holiday season to bring that fragrance inside your home. Now, specifically today, I'm going to be kind of making some porch pots and talking about that because it's one of my favorite things to do. It's super, super easy. So we'll kind of be talking mainly about that, or I'll be showing you how to do that. But I'll also reference if you're making a wreath or a garland, if you want to make your own. Of course, we have plenty here for you to purchase if you live in the Hampton Roads area. But let's talk about the cut greens that work the best and that last the longest here in the Hampton Roads area and really kind of on the East Coast. I mean, when you're looking for fresh greens, of course, the first thing that you think about is conifers. So if you're out there, in your yard, it won't hurt to do a little bit of snipping here and there. Take some of your fresh greens. There are two kind of main categories that I really kind of get into when we talk about fresh greens and what we can use. There's the conifers, which are going to be Fraser fir, the deodar cedars, the blue atlas cedars, all the different types of cedars, and cypress and juniper. There's a huge list there. I'll go over my whole list here in a second. But there's also broadleaf evergreens, and broadleaf evergreens are things like boxwood and magnolia, and there's a whole lot of different ones that you can use there, as well as holly. Those give you a lot of different texture and a lot of different looks, and we'll be using some of those today as well. So you definitely want to look around your yard, talk to your neighbors and your friends. If they've got plants that you would love to use for clippings, I'm sure you can ask them for a couple clippings and they'll be glad to give them to you. It's a great way to kind of share during the holiday season and get some of those great fresh greens. So let's talk about conifers first. Arborvitae. So I'm going to go over my list here, and this is just some of them. I mean, the list is huge. But Arborvitae, juniper, cypress, cedar, fir, pine, and spruce. So typically you're not going to have Fraser firs growing in this area. If you've ever had a Fraser fir cut tree, it's one of the most popular because of the aroma, of the needle retention. It's just a great cut green. It's a great cut tree for sure. But they don't really grow in the Hampton Roads area because of our altitude. So typically Fraser fir is going to grow on a higher altitude. But you can purchase these in the store, or if you get a cut tree, that will give you the branches off the bottom that we'll have to trim off in order to get your tree to fit in your tree stand, as we talked about a couple weeks ago. But it's a great thing to use. It's just not something that you're going to find locally. However, there are lots of junipers. There's cypress. Leyland Cypress are an extremely popular plant used for hedges, used for screening, and it is a great cut green. And I've got some somewhere here. So I'm going to be pulling out a bunch of this stuff and I'll show it to you. So this is Fraser fir. I think you all know Fraser fir. This is Leyland Cypress, one of my favorite ones to decorate with. Super, super full. Got a nice little fragrance to it, but it's really, really easy to use and you get lots and lots of little tips. So if you're looking at limbing up a Leyland Cypress, or maybe you've got a branch that maybe doesn't look so hot, you can cut off the whole branch and you get 100 tips on that one branch sometimes, especially a lower branch. But you can also go through and tip your Leyland Cypress right now. And that's what this basically is, just taking all these little tips off of your tree. It'll grow right back in the spring. So we're not harming anything. It's actually probably pretty good for trees because usually when you prune something, it's going to break a little bit more and it's going to fill out a little bit more. So as long as with conifers, you don't cut in too deep to the point where it's brown inside. So think of like if you've got a dwarf Alberta spruce or even like a gold mop cypress, one of my favorites, which I forgot to bring in here, but gold mop cypress is a great one. But sometimes if you open it up and you look on the inside, you'll see some brown. You don't want to cut that far. You just want to do some light tipping. You can cut a longer branch out if you need a longer piece. You can cut a longer branch out, but you won't be cutting the entire thing back. If you cut it all the way back to where it's brown inside, it's not going to come back from that. You got to leave some green on there for it to be able to regenerate and grow from next spring. So completely fine, completely okay for plants to be tipped and lightly pruned. But this is Leyland Cypress. There's lots and lots of different types of cedar out there. This is Deodora cedar, or a Blue Atlas cedar is really what this is. So this is from our weeping Blue Atlas cedar out front. You might not have this, but probably a neighbor or a friend probably does. If you do have this, you can take long stems like this. I love this because of all these long kind of wispy looks. Super, super easy. Of course, pine. Pine grows naturally in this area, so you'll have lots of opportunities. Now, most pine is going to be like this. This is a slash pine or a loblolly pine. These are, of course, huge trees, 50 to 60 feet tall. You might have some saplings growing up underneath, and that's a great opportunity. If you don't want those trees there, you might consider moving it to a spot that it will grow. But if you don't want them there, then just cut them off. It's a great thing to use saplings that maybe you don't, that are going to be removed later, save them for around the November, December timeframe, and then use those as a good cutting. Now, also what happens is a lot of the squirrels will do some of the work for you right now too. So the squirrels up in the pine trees will clip off some of the ends of the branches. Doesn't hurt the pine tree. It's just a tipping again. And you might see these laying around on the ground after a storm, or even from the squirrels' activity up in the trees. So this is a great option for you. Now, of course, we carry some different pines as well. This is white pine. White pine is a little bit different because it's going to have a shorter needle. It's also going to have a longer stem, which I love. So you're going to see kind of this long stem and then a little tuft of needles at the end. So white pine is a great option as well. Let's see, what other conifers do I have here? We talked about cypress. And the juniper. And the juniper is absolutely gorgeous. There's lots and lots of different types of juniper. There's Hollywood juniper. There is the ground cover types of junipers, the dwarf garden juniper, the blue rug junipers. Lots and lots of different ones. And a lot of times you're going to get berries on them like this. So really, really nice option for you is the junipers. And of course, Arborvitae. I didn't bring in Arborvitae. Arborvitae looks very similar to cypress. So it's going to be kind of a flat scale-like needle like this. But that's a great option as well. And lots of us have Arborvitae and gold Mop Cypress, and even yew. So yew is considered a conifer, and you can use that. If you've got false yew or regular yew, those are great options as well. I'll take a second and pause and say hello to everybody that kind of got back in and joined us. Hi, Mike, or sorry, hi, Deborah. Hope you are doing well. Lauren, do you have all the greens available at both locations? Lauren, we should. I know here at the Independence location we have a very, very good selection, but we do have a good selection over at our Great Neck store as well. Would Nandina with the red berries be good to use as greenery, said Don? Don, yes, and that was going to be in my next group. How often should I water my Norfolk Island pine? So Norfolk Island pines inside, can't give you an exact time frame, Deborah. The best way to tell you is to let the top 2 to 3 inches of soil dry out before you water again. So it's not a complete wet dry cycle, but it's pretty close. So water it really well, let the top 2 to 3 inches dry out, and then water it again. So pretty easy one there. It just depends on location. If it's close to a radiator or heater, then you might be watering a little bit more often. So I can't say it's once a week, but it's somewhere when the top 2 to 3 inches of soil dry out a little bit. All right, so next one for Don is Broadleaf Evergreens. So Broadleaf Evergreens is a different kind of plant. There's a lot of different ones out there, but of course Boxwood is one of the first things that come to my mind. Boxwood is super, super easy. A lot of people grow it, and it's a really, really easy one to use for cuttings, to make wreaths, and it adds a different texture. So when we're looking at our conifers, they tend to all be similar. They're all going to have different traits, but a boxwood with a conifer is really going to add a lot of different texture. Boxwood's one of my favorites. Nandina is what Don mentioned. That is a great option as well. Sometimes with the bigger domestic Nandinas, I'll just cut the berries off because they have big, huge clusters of berries. And berries are a harder one to come by. Holly is another one. So this is where I get into my holly boxwood thing. So when we're talking about hollies for cut greens, your prickly hollies, your thicker leather leaf types of hollies, like your Nellie Stevens, your Foster hollies, or your Oakland hollies, those are going to be great for cutting. They're going to last a long time. And a lot of them will have berries. Burford hollies is a great option. Now, when you get into more of your soft needle hollies, like what I like to call our boxwood lookalikes, which are like Japanese hollies, compacta hollies, inkberry. Inkberry works okay, but really all of your softer leaf, your soft touch hollies, your Bordeaux hollies, all of those are not going to last very long as cut greens. And you might say, how do I know the difference? Well, I can tell you a very simple way to know which one you have. Usually hollies are going to be grown in full sun. Not to say they can't grow in shade. And boxwoods are typically going to grow in the shade. Not to say that they can't grow in the sun. But really the telltale sign is the leaf. There's not a huge difference in the leaf. I'm going to take this little, get my pruners. I'm going to take a little snip off here and see if I can show you this. It's pretty easy to kind of determine. But when you look at a leaf like this, I'm going to try and get it real close to the camera. That looks like it could be a holly or a boxwood. Who knows? But hollies, the leaves hit on the stem at every other, so almost like rungs on a ladder. They're going to hit opposite of each other. They're never going to hit in the same spot, where boxwoods do. So the boxwoods, the leaves are going to hit on the exact same spot on the stem. And you can see it right down here on the bottom. See how those two leaves right there at the bottom hit on the exact same spot on the stem, and that's a boxwood. So now we know it's a boxwood. If it was a holly, it's going to hit at different points on the stem. So a leaf is going to come in on this side, and then another leaf is going to come in down here, and another one down here. Those are not going to last as long. So when you're looking at your different types of broadleaf evergreens and you're looking for a holly or a boxwood, then that's how you can tell the difference. Now your prickly hollies can be perfectly fine with. There's lots of them. There's Chinese hollies. There's lots and lots of different options out there. And if you got berries, that's even better. It's going to add a lot of color to your porch pot or any kind of decorating that you're doing around your home with your fresh greens. Magnolia, of course, is another great option. A lot of us have magnolias. A lot of our neighbors or friends might have magnolias. And this is going to add a lot of great texture. Magnolia lasts a long amount of time. It's super, super easy to use. And with not a lot of work, you can get a little tip of the branch. The magnolia is not going to be hurt by it. And it's going to add a lot of texture and a lot of different colors. And of course, sometimes you get these really amazing leaves that have that really nice brown side. Typically, it's going to be on a newer leaf, whereas you see some of the older leaves are going to be more of the green back. But these brown backs really add a lot of texture. When I make wreaths out of these, I like to take some of those brown back ones and flip them over so that you get a little bit of that color contrast. And that's really what we're looking for here when we're doing our decorating, is a little bit of contrast in our leafy greens and our conifers. Now, this is not what you're limited to. There's other ones. There's a Cuba, there's laurel, there's a lot of different ones. Even people say rhododendron works pretty well. So there's a lot of different options out there for greens. Try it. If it doesn't last very long, then you know not to use that. That's kind of the cool thing about this. If you cut some stuff and you bring it in and you're decorating your mantle or something, and it doesn't seem to last very long, then you can easily pick it out and pop something new in. We'll talk about some tips and tricks here in just a second. But there's a lot of other things that you can look around your yard and in nature or here at the garden center if you need some different options. And I'm not going to exclude lifelike or artificial. It's kind of a taboo word here. Artificial or fake. We don't like to use that word. We like to use lifelike. But for example, this is a little pine spruce needle. Now this, I think, looks extremely lifelike. It's got a lot of little brown, and it's got little tiny pine cones in it. So this is a great option if you're looking for some filler and you need something and you don't have anything around your home. This is a great option because these you can use year after year after year. So I'm always picking up the ones that I like around the garden center each year because I can always find a use for them. Also, with that, in that same kind of vein, you hear the bells ringing. There's lots of different types of picks and things that you can use as well. So this is a great option to add some color or some texture. So we can use artificial, fake, lifelike items in our porch pots or in our decorating with fresh greens. It doesn't have to be all fresh greens. Can be, but it doesn't have to be. Then there's also a lot of other things around nature. Pine cones, of course, is a great option. Lots and lots of pine cones out there. I don't think your neighbors or your friends will have a problem if you pick up a couple pine cones. A lot of times after a rain, you'll see that they'll fold up and they'll be really tight. That's okay. Bring them in your house, let them dry out, and they'll open up, and they're super, super easy to use. If you're looking for some bigger ones, we do carry them here at the store. So if you're looking, a lot of these are a little bit harder to find. Typically, these are going to come from long needle pines and different types of pines, but this is a great option. Austrian pines. There's a lot of different pines in the area that will produce bigger pine cones. And then, of course, one that doesn't grow in this area is like the sugar pine cone. So if you're looking for that big, huge pine cone, we sell these. They're super easy. They're not very expensive, $6.99, and you get this huge pine cone. And these you can use year after year. Just store them in a cool, dry place where you're not going to get too excessively hot and too excessively cold, and where you're not going to get moisture. And these will last a long, long time. So sugar pine cones are a great option, but all pine cones I love. And then, of course, sticks and branches. Let's see, I think this is dogwood maybe. This is just, I mean, literally, so this is a birch twig. Birch are great for cut green or for cut branches. I mean, white birch doesn't grow in our area anymore, but sometimes you can buy white birch. We'll talk about a couple different ways of kind of faking that too here. But branches in general, I mean, this doesn't have that real birchy look to it. It just looks like a branch to me. And these work great. If you've got red twig dogwood, excuse me, or yellow twig dogwood, those are great options as well. A lot of people don't grow those in this area anymore, but just branches by themselves are perfectly fine. You can also paint them. So you can take these and lay them out and spray paint them red or white, whatever you want, and you can get a really nice look with just using something from nature. And again, not gonna hurt any of the plants. I have a great rose of Sharon. It's got really nice straight stems. I love to use those. I know last year when I did my mom's porch pots, she had this vine growing up in her backyard that was really twisted. I think it was a grapevine, a wild grapevine. So I cut some of that and stuck it in there. Really cool look. So you can look around. There's lots and lots of different options. And of course, let's not forget some of the other things, like ribbon is a great option. Lights, lots of light choices that you can use. Ornaments work as well. And a couple different things that I'll show you here in a little bit as I start to make some porch pots. Let's see if we've got any questions real quick that I can answer. All right, so, okay, good. So we just got a little bit more information to Deborah. Perfect. All right, so let's get started on creating. Now, before I really get started, I want to just throw out a couple things because I know in the description it's decorating with fresh greens. So I want to give you some tips and some tricks. So first, let's talk about when we cut all of these greens. What should we do? How are we going to make them last a really long time? Well, the first thing that I like to do is when I cut them, get them into a bucket of water as fast as I possibly can. Because when it's cut, it'll still drink a lot of moisture. I talk about this one whenever we talk about our fresh cut trees. Make sure to keep that moisture in there because it's going to absorb a lot of it initially. So let it absorb some moisture. Sometimes you can spray it down with a hose over the top too. Don't let it freeze if you can. That does help to kind of keep it just in some water. It doesn't matter about the temperature of the water, any of that kind of stuff. You can put some additives in there, like Prolong is a great option that we use for our fresh cut trees. But after I've given mine a little bit of a soaking, anywhere from 2 hours to 2 days, it doesn't really matter. If you're not quite ready to use them, just let them sit in a bucket of water. But wilt proof is another great option. So wilt proof comes in a ready to use. It also comes in a concentrate. Almost all of our fresh greens are dipped in this, so you don't have to typically worry about it if you're purchasing your fresh greens from us. But if you're using your own fresh greens, it's not a bad idea to spray them with wilt proof. It might make them a little sticky to work with, but it's going to make them last a long time. So wilt proof is a great option and great tip to use for around your home. When we're decorating our home inside with fresh greens, try and keep your fresh greens away from a heat source. I know we all use them. We want to use them over top of our mantle of our fireplace, which is perfectly fine. Typically, I will say you'll get somewhere around 3 to 4 weeks out of your fresh greens. So use your timing. That's why we're talking about it now at the beginning of December, is because it's not going to last 2 months. So if you start decorating at the beginning of November, like I do, like we all do here at the Garden Center, then it's not going to last the entire time. So realize that you might have to change it out halfway through the season if you're going to start early. So, and of course, we're all going to make mistakes. That's okay. That's part of gardening. That's part of decorating. And if you do, just think about using a good base. So when I talk about using a mantle, a table, maybe I'm doing a centerpiece decoration, whatever it is inside my home, I'm going to use a good strong base that I know is reliable. So something like a fresh green, like a Fraser fir tip, or even the Leyland Cypress, which is a great option. These I know are tried and true. They're going to last 3 to 4 weeks. I'm not going to have to worry about it. So this can be my main base. If I go to try something new that maybe I haven't used before, or maybe I'm not quite sure how long it's going to last, then I'll use that as an additional additive to my centerpiece or my indoor decor decorating, whether it's on a mantle or anywhere, or even a small porch pot inside my house. Because I don't know quite how long it's going to last, then it's just an addition, and I can go and take it out real quick, and then I can pop in something new throughout the year. I mean, we've always got ornaments laying around. We've always got ribbon. There's a lot of great options to add to these things that you can use around your home. Now, if you're making a wreath or a garland, you definitely are going to want to check out my past webinar that I did last year on wreath making and garlands. It's super, super easy. Really, the biggest, most important thing is creating bunches. And so then it's just wiring it onto the frame, really. And so that's probably the biggest thing, is when you look at like a real fresh cut wreath, then what they have done basically is they've just taken all of these tips And they're just going to put them together in a nice bunch. And so they're going to get this nice bunch like this. And you might add different things to it, like I might add some of the Leyland Cypress. So I could take a little sprig of this Leyland Cypress and put it in there with it. And that's going to be my fresh bunch right there. And then all I'm going to do is just wire that onto the frame. Same with the garland. Garland, you use a piece of twine or some piece of rope, a small piece of rope, and that's really just a guide. And then you're just going to wire it onto that, and then you're just going to layer them on top of each other. And it's really, really easy. So if you want to make your own fresh wreath or garland, go and check out that past webinar. It's a really, really great way to see all the different ones. I did a Boxwood, I did a Magnolia, I did a fresh one with mixed greens, and it's all about creating an excellent bunch. It's super, super easy to do. You definitely want to check that out. But today, I really want to make my porch pots. Porch pots are one of my favorite things to do because it's super easy and you really can't mess it up. And they last a long time, especially if we're using them on our front porch where we get cooler temperatures, because these stems are going to be actually put into soil. So let's go through a list of the things that you might need. You're going to need pruners. So I always have my handy pruners. Doesn't matter what type, doesn't matter how nice they are. I like a bypass pruner, so they're like scissors, so they make a nice, fresh, easy cut, nice, clean cut. So pruners are definitely going to be a necessity. Gloves, which are underneath my pot over here. So gloves are a great thing to have because a lot of the conifers are going to have sap, and it's going to be super, super sticky. So it's good to wear gloves just because it's a little bit of a safety thing and it keeps the sap off of our fingers. I know when I used to load fresh cut trees, I would hardly ever wear gloves, and man, I had to scrub my hands to get all that sap off. So get a pair of gloves. It'll really help. I love these because they're nice and tight, and it's easy for me to grip and feel things and do different things. So grab a pair of gloves, and then wire. You're always going to need some wire. Trust me, whenever we're doing decorating, if you don't know, and I don't know if I put it in here, okay, paddle wire is my absolute favorite. You're going to see me use this if you go back and you look at my wreath or garland making webinar. I love paddle wire. It's something that I always have. I almost carry it in my pocket during the holiday seasons. It's a super, super easy thing to use and grab. It's dark green. It's a coated wire, so it just blends right into your greenery, and it's a great thing to always have around during the holidays. We do carry a lot of these strips as well, so I know you can't quite see that, but these are little strips of it that are pre-cut, which is also nice too. Whenever I'm doing some sort of craft like this, then I like to have pieces of cut wire because I can just grab them if I need them. I don't have to take it and unspool it. So if you're using a spool wire, just cut off some pieces so you have a little bit of extra cut wire ready to use. Let's see, what else do we need? We're going to need pots for this one, so we're going to need some sort of pottery. Let's see, the first one I'm going to start with is I picked out this nice little white pot. So we'll start with that one. I'm going to put a saucer down here to protect my table. But I've got a nice little white pot here. And let's see if I can, maybe I'll try and raise that up a little bit for you. This is going to be my next one. I'm going to do a terracotta pot. Now you can do this in any kind of pot, a terracotta pot, a ceramic pot, a plastic pot. You're going to see on my final one that I'm going to do it in a plastic pot and then insert it into a ceramic pot. So there's lots and lots of different options, but you need some sort of container that's going to hold the soil or whatever we use to pack it in. And there's a couple different things there. I'm going to use soil today because that's what we use here at the garden center is soil, and I've got plenty of it. You can buy those Oasis blocks. They work pretty well. Usually it's a one-time use with those. You can use sand. My all-time favorite is a root ball of maybe a mum or something. So let's say I had this planted up in the spring with begonias or petunias or whatever it might have been. And the season has passed and I never planted my pansies in there. Maybe I just didn't do anything with it. So instead of scrapping the whole thing and scrapping the soil, cut off the top. It's probably dead by now. And that root ball that's in there is going to be super, super tight and compact, and it's going to be really easy to stuff greens in there. I did that this year. I planted all my mums in terracotta pots because my plan is to go and make some porch pots with them. And so now that I've got that nice tight root ball, it's going to be really, really easy for me to work on and do. I don't have to add anything. Sand is okay. It does become a little bit loose. It also can fall through the hole at the bottom. You can use any kind of container. So we can use a galvanized bucket. We can use lots and lots of different things. I typically like to have a hole in mine because if I'm using it outside on my front porch or in an area that's going to get rained on, it's not going to fill up with water and get kind of nasty and boggy on me. If you're willing to drain it every so often, because you don't want that water to sit for a long time, it'll smell bad eventually, then you can use a container that doesn't have a hole in it. And there's lots of different options out there. Anything that'll hold something is going to be a great vessel for your porch pot. And there's lots and lots of different options. So you're going to need something to put it in. You're going to need your soil or whatever you're going to use to hold the greens in. And then your accessories. So think about all the different accessories you're going to need, like ribbon, lights, ornaments, pine cones, twigs, all of those different things, as well as, of course, our fresh greens. So take some time. A little bit of planning goes a long way. Whenever I talk about a project, just do a little bit of planning. Just think about it. You can also go online and just do a Google search and just type in porch pot combo ideas or fresh green porch pots, and you'll see tons of images. That's a great way to kind of get inspired and think about some of the different things. And hopefully, I will inspire you as well to do some of these things around your home. I'm going to do this small pot first because I want to be able to have something small that I can show you that you can use inside. So if you're looking for that fragrance indoors, if you've maybe got a fireplace that you want to set this on, or front steps, somewhere inside your home, you might want a smaller option. As a centerpiece in the table, great option. So a lot of times what I will do is I will fill this with soil. So we'll start with that here in a second. You can use a lot of different things to kind of protect your hole. I've got a little piece of paper I'm going to use here, so I'm going to use that just to kind of prevent all the soil from coming out of my hole. So I'm just going to use this little piece of paper here. That'll eventually biodegrade and release moisture. If I'm going to use this in my home, I'll probably have a saucer underneath it to protect my furniture, not necessarily to hold the water, just to protect the furniture. You don't have to water these things very often inside your home. Just depends. You want to let that soil dry out a little bit, and then you can give it a nice dose of water, take it outside, let it drain, bring it back in. But I like to put something over top of the hole, coffee filters, tissue, weed fabric. There's lots of great options. Because I'm using this in my home, I like to be able to prevent the soil from coming out. Inevitably, it will hold a little bit more moisture because of that, but again, you can use lots and lots of different things to kind of prevent the soil from coming out of the bottom of the hole. Now this is super easy. Again, if I had a root ball, I would use it. I don't, so I'm just going to pack this full of soil. And this is the exact opposite of what I typically tell people to do when you're planting a combo container with plants. Normally I would say don't ever pack the soil, just leave it nice and loose. Here we need it as tight as we possibly can get it. And I want it pretty full because I am going to pack it down. So we're going to get it pretty close to the top there. And then we'll just pack it down here. And this I would never do, whether I'm planting a plant in the yard or in a container. I would never pat this down as tight as I am doing this. But because I'm using it to hold up my fresh greens, then I'm perfectly fine with it. So we'll just add a little bit more soil. It doesn't have to go all the way to the top. I like to always give myself a good, maybe 1.5 to 1 inch kind of lip there to kind of give me a little bit of area where I can hide some of my work a little bit if I need to. All right, so we'll pack that down really, really nice and tight, and then we can start adding our fresh greens. Lots of different options here. Whenever I do a combo container, I typically will put a centerpiece in there, something that's got some height, but it doesn't have to be. So this one I'm actually going to do a little bit more on the rounded side. So you can see you don't have to always have a centerpiece. You can keep it nice and simple. Whenever we're doing a combo container with plants, with actually planting plants, we're always going to kind of have those same 3 elements: a spiller, a filler, and a thriller. Now in this case, I'm going to kind of eliminate the thriller, and I'm just going to add a spiller and a filler. So it's a nice kind of little round kind of look, maybe a little spiky, but not super, super intentional to have a centerpiece, because sometimes that's hard to find. I will be honest with you, centerpieces are sometimes one of the hardest things to figure out during the holiday season of what to add in there. Now sticks are a great option. I'm going to show you one at the end when I do my big one, another great option as well. All right, so I've got my soil in there. Now I want a good base. So I want something I know that's going to last. Remember my tip? I want something that's going to last a long time and I know is super reliable, and something that's going to give me a good, nice, full base. And typically I like to try and limit how many different things I put in there. Now you'll probably see on my big last one that I'll probably put a fair amount of things in it. But on a simpler scale like this one, then I like to try and keep it somewhere around 3 different types of conifers or 3 different types of greens that I'm using. So I'm going to use this really pretty juniper here. Now a lot of times I don't need all of this. So I don't need this much stick and I don't want it to be that tall. So you're always kind of thinking about how big do you want it to be. Whenever I make a new cut, I like to cut on an angle so that it's got a nice angle to it, more surface area to absorb moisture. Plus, it gives me a little bit of a stronger point to kind of pop it in there and get a nice, strong kind of insert there so I know it's not going to move on me. I want to get it pretty deep into the soil. So this is a cool one because it's got 2 little branches that are coming off it. I don't really need to do much to that one. I'm just going to cut it at an angle. And then I want all of these to kind of be curving up. So as I'm doing this, I'm always thinking about how do I want this to really look. Again, this is fail-safe. You're not going to mess this up because it's really just jam it all in there, and then we can touch it up at the end. And we can always add more if we want to. So I'm going to use this whole bunch kind of as my main base layer here. And I like to use it all if I can. So I'm going to use all of it up. I've got a couple other little pieces. This really filled up a majority of the pot here. But I've got a couple of these little pieces here. So we'll just go ahead and use those just to fill in a couple little gaps if we see them. So that's really my filler. So that's really really filled up my container there with this really nice green. It's got an amazing fragrance. I love that aroma. All right, so then what we need to do is add a little bit more. So I want to change up the texture here, and I'm going to use a little bit of my boxwood. Boxwood is great. It's super easy to use, and it lasts a long time. So again, this is another kind of tried and true that I don't have to worry about. These look great in wreaths, little sprigs of it here and there, but it's a great also kind of filler. In this case, I'm going to use it a little bit more as a spiller. So I'm going to use it to really kind of spill out the side. And you're not going to get a straight trailer like you would with like a sweet potato vine or something, but this is going to kind of emulate the same thing. And I'm just going to pop this in here and there to add a little bit of break in texture and color and give me a little bit of that trail that I'm looking for. I just want a little bit off the sides here. And this is, again, really easy. Not a lot of thought has to go into it. In fact, I find a lot of times that if I don't think about it too much and I just kind of do it, it becomes very natural and very realistic looking to me, where it looks like it just happened by accident, and that it kind of does when you just kind of wing it and you just kind of put it in there, because if you mess up, you can always fix it later. So there we go. I've added some boxwood just to add a little bit of fresh greenery in there and to add a little bit of different texture. Now I do want to fill in this kind of open space in the middle, and I want to kind of do one last, I think I'm going to do the Leyland Cypress. So this is one of my favorites. Love the texture, love the color, love the fragrance, and it's super, super reliable. So this is going to be all pretty much fresh greens, and then maybe we'll add a little bit of ribbon to the end of it. I'll show you a little trick with my ribbon that you can do to just add a little bit of color and a little bit of look to it. You can add berries. You can add lots of different things, ornaments, super, super easy. I'm going to try and use as many of them as I create these. But I want a little bit of height here. I don't want something anything too tall. I don't want to really, I just kind of really want to keep it right in this kind of realm right here. It's a smaller pot. I want to use it inside, so I don't need anything too big. So we're just going to cut this right there. Perfect. And I'm just going to fill in that center area with this Leyland Cypress. And if I get too big of a piece, then I can cut it. And so here's a great thing to tell you here, a great little trick. I cut this piece out of here, and I cut it so that you can kind of see the cut right there in the center of it. But because I've got all these other little shoots coming off of it, instead of just slicing it right off the top and giving it that flat top cut, then I cut it intentionally to have this nice sprig, so it almost looks like I've got 2 really perfectly good sprigs, and I got it out of 1. So always think about what you're going to do before you start cutting it, because you might be able to use it in more places than 1. So making sure that every stem gets down into the soil. so that it lasts a nice long time, whether you're using Oasis or you're using sand. You want that to have a good contact with that because that's what's going to hold the moisture in and keep them fresh as long as possible. So there you go, a nice little simple fresh green. Now, it's a little bit green. It's got a lot of different texture in it. It's got a great fragrance. If you were here, you would be amazed by the fragrance, but maybe I want to add a little bit of color. So I'm going to use this ribbon. Take my gloves off. This I do not need my gloves for. I'm going to take this ribbon. It's a nice thick ribbon. I love ribbon that has wire in it because you can mold it and kind of change it. So what I'm going to do here, you know what? I think I forgot scissors. Maybe I can get somebody to bring me a pair of scissors. So this is what I'm going to do with this. I like to cut it once I know how much length I need. So the first thing I'm going to do is take this. I've got a couple little pieces of wire that are poking out. I'm going to use my pruners for this. Perfect. I got somebody bringing me a pair of scissors. Thank you so much. All right, so I got scissors. So what I'm going to do is I always like to cut my ribbon with a little bit of an angle. So I'm just going to do a little bit of an angle here. Doesn't have to be super perfect. Remember, don't think about it too much. Don't make it perfect. It's nice if it's kind of got a little bit of a natural feel to it. So we're just going to cut that off like that. So I've got a little bit of an angle cut, so it's really, it just finishes it off nice. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take it and I'm going to create a little loop to it. So I can show you how to make a bow here in a little bit, maybe if I've got time. I don't know if I will. But all I'm going to do is this is going to be kind of a tail that's going to come out. And then I want to bring it in and get myself some slack here. I'm going to try and keep this close to the screen so you can see it, close to the camera. So I've got my tail, and then I've got this extra ribbon. Now I'm going to turn it because it creates a nice little tight bunch here in the center. And then I'm just going to come over, I'm going to come under actually, and bunch it up here. And what that's going to do is that's basically how you create a bow, is you're just kind of creating these little bunches. And then that's going to be really it. Now I might do a couple more. Let's do just a couple more. So I've got a little bit of a fuller kind of bow look, so we're going to give it a twist, and then we're going to come back and bring it back in. And then we're going to give it a twist again. And then I'm going to come over on this side and bring it back in. So hopefully you can see me do that. I know it's not super easy. Hard for me to show you this. Usually I'd be looking at it straight down so I can see everything I'm doing. And then, of course, because I've got my cut wire, then I can just grab a piece, maybe two. Sometimes I like to use two. It depends on the gauge of the wire. But I'll just use two little pieces here, and then I'm just going to wrap it right around where I've got it pinched off. And then I just twist it nice and tight. And now I can make my final cut. And I want this to be a slightly shorter piece than the other one. So again, cutting at an angle, so I've got a nice little angle cut because it just finishes it off nice and neat. And I know, looks like not a whole lot, right? But what this is going to give me is a lot of ability to just add a little bit of color and again the texture. So we've got this nice little thing. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this extra wire and I'm going to kind of wrap it around itself a few times. And what that's going to do is give me almost a spike. Now I could attach this to a branch, which would be very, very easy to do. I can just put it right on a branch and then I can stick the branch in. But what I usually do is I'll leave myself a little bit of extra wire. I know it's hard to see because this wire is thin. And then I will just twist it around itself a bunch of times. And that'll give me a nice kind of spike to be able to insert right into the soil. Okay. So there we go. It's not really a bow necessarily. It's more of just kind of like a little loop with a couple tails. And it just adds a little bit of color and texture. And then I can just insert it right down into the soil. And then I can just kind of shape it up. So great way to add a little bit of texture to your porch pot. Super, super simple, really easy. Can't mess it up. You can add a lot of different things to this. But we'll keep getting bigger and bolder here as we go along. So we'll put this one off to the side. And then we'll move to the terracotta pot. I'm going to keep this down here a little bit lower. Let's see if I can get a little piece of paper here, again, just to protect my hole and prevent the hole from releasing too much soil. Depends on the size of the hole. If it's not a very big hole, you don't necessarily have to do that. The soil will kind of fill in that area and not allow the soil to fall out. But because I'm inside and I want to keep my area as clean as I possibly can, then we will put some down in there. All right, so put my gloves back on because I'm going to get sappy and sticky here. Now, I love terracotta. Terracotta is very, very easy to use. Everybody usually has some terracotta laying around. And again, because you might plant something in there, save the root ball because you might need it in the winter. It's a great thing. I always talk about it when I tell people about mums. A lot of us throw away our mums. They have a very good aggressive root system, so they kind of take over the soil. And a lot of people throw away the whole thing. Save it. Save the plastic pot too. You're going to see here when I finish up on my third and final one that you can use that plastic pot to insert into another container. So I'm going to pat this down really nice and tight. Get my ribbon out of the way. All right, this one I'm going to use pine as kind of my main kind of base here. So I've got all this really pretty white pine here that I absolutely love. Really wispy and kind of natural. So I'm going to cut this off. So I've got kind of a lot of branches here. It looks nice and full. So I'm going to use that, and I probably won't use much of that stem. I'm going to do kind of the same thing here now. White pine has a little bit more of a weeping habit, so you can see how it's kind of weeping over the side there. And that's perfect. So this is going to be my big trailer. This one I will do more of a filler, thriller, and spiller technique, so you can see how that works. So this is going to be my spiller for sure, because it has that great weeping habit. And again, always making my cut on an angle, so I've got a little bit of a pokey stick that I can always put down into the soil much easier, especially if you're working with a root ball. It helps to do that because it'll get it through the soil and through that root ball a little bit easier. I think we need a little bit more. So I'm just making a nice big mess. It's okay because we can always clean it up later. And again, I'm really not thinking too much about what I'm doing. I want it to be somewhat natural, so I'm really just kind of popping it in and letting it be natural. And you don't have to worry about space or anything like that. The more you cram in there, I typically think the better. Again, just kind of limiting the amount of different material that you're putting in there. Sometimes if we put too much in there, it looks like we put too much in there. Maybe we added too many different things. Love white pine. You might have some white pine naturally growing in your area. If you don't, you can come in here and pick out some nice white pine bunches. So there we go. You can see it's a nice kind of floppy kind of really nice spiller out of my container. Now, I needed something that's really going to add some density to this container. I need something that's going to add a little bit of thickness, but I also want to think about my centerpiece here too. So let's see, what do I want to do? I think I'm going to use these twigs as my centerpiece on this one. So these are all bound together. I'll just cut that off. And then I've got all of these nice great branches that I can use here. Really, really easy. So then we just want to test the height here. How big do I want this to get? That's actually pretty good. So when I put that in there, that's about as tall as I want it to get. I don't need it to be any bigger than that. So I don't really need to cut these much. And these are branches. They're dead. They're not coming back. I don't really care about them too much, so I don't have to worry about putting these in moisture or anything. This is basically just a completely bare branch. I don't care if the needles stay on. There's no needles. There's nothing on it. So I can just kind of pop them in there. And again, I'm trying not to think about it too much. I just want them in there haphazardly and easy so it looks very natural. And it gets me the kind of coverage I want. Now, if I wanted to spray paint these white, that would add a nice little color to it. But I don't have spray paint with me, and I'm going to keep it kind of simple. And then my next texture that I want to put in there, let's see, what else do I have here? I think I might use, so we might go a little bit more on, let's use some Magnolia. The Magnolia is going to be really nice and natural with this. And that's probably the perfect size right there. And that's really going to fill in a little bit. And I might break my rule here and do more than 3 things because I feel like I want a little bit more greenery in there. So we've got a couple nice bunches here of Magnolia. And Magnolia will fill up a container nice and quick, which is nice. So if you're looking for something and you don't have a whole lot of anything, then Magnolia is a great option because it'll add a lot of filler real fast. And again, we're kind of using our thriller, spiller, and filler, and Magnolia is certainly my spiller in this case. All right, I think I need one more piece of Magnolia just to fill this in, and I'll hold this up so you can see it. Just making sure that everything's getting into the soil and is nice and tight. So if I'm using this on my front porch, we get a lot of high winds during this time of the year, and that is a great looking container. Now, I want a little bit of color. Love red, love to use red. I could use these bells in there. That would actually not look bad. But another great option is, if you don't have berries, which a lot of us, berries are probably one of the hardest things to come by, then you can use Lifelike Berries. It's a great option, and because there's a lot of different types of them out there, the hard berries are typically a little bit better outside, but the soft ones can tend to pop sometimes, but a lot of times they're pretty much made to not do that anymore. But this is a great option here. So artificial berries is a really, really easy thing to use, and you can cut these. So they're wired so that you can move them and change them, but you can also cut them because I want to use this one pick in this entire container. I don't need a big centerpiece of berries. I want to use them around the outskirt to kind of create a nice look. So I'm kind of looking at it and I'm saying to myself, how can I get 3? I probably want 3, maybe 4 good bunches out of here. So let's see if I can go and take that one out. And you know, if you got a good pair of pruners, you'll be able to snip right through that wire, no problem. And it's actually got a little bit of leaf on it, so that'll add a little bit of texture too. And then I just pop that little sprig in there just for a little bit of color. All right. Usually I like to do things in odds. So usually I like to have kind of 3 sides to it. You can do it a little bit differently, as I'll show you on my final one. That you can do it more like I love to do containers, more asymmetrical, not very symmetrical. So you can do that as well, and I will show you that on my last one here. And then let's see, I thought I had one more little piece. There we go. All right, so there we go. Really simple, very natural, very elegant, very easy. I could add, you know what I love with Magnolia is gold or copper. Looks great, so I could add lights to this if I wanted to, or I could use this really pretty gold ribbon. I'm not going to do it just for the sake of time because I'm running a little late and I want to get to my big one here, but this would look great inside this container. Just a little bit of that kind of sheer gold ribbon would look awesome. I could tie a bow up on the top here. I could tie a bow in here inside the branches and let it kind of billow over the top. You can just use single pieces all the way around. So, or I could wrap it around the container on the bottom and add a bow to that. So think about all the different ways you can use ribbon. It's very, very easy. All right, we'll put that one off to the side. And then we'll do the final big one. And this, I think a lot of us have, is you know, a big pot that maybe we're not quite sure what to use with. I don't want to fill it with pansies. I don't know what to use it. It's a great thing to do this. And really, this can last a long time. And I'm really going to push myself to think outside the box and do different things here. So I'm going to use a plastic pot to fill this up so I don't have to put all the soil in my big ceramic pot, so I don't have to make it too heavy to move. So I can move these as separate pieces. So I'll be bringing that pot back up here later, but I'm going to use this plastic pot and make it an insert into my ceramic pot. So this is going to take a little bit more soil. Again, if I had something that maybe I'd planted all my spring annuals in, save the root ball, save that soil, and just water it down nice and good, and then pack it down nice and tight. Remember that you did this, so if you go to replanting it, that you might have to loosen up your soil, because you don't want to compact it too much and then go and plant it in the spring. Now, if you're using conifers and different types of things like pines, that's going to make your soil a little bit more acidic. So think about that as well. If you're going to reuse this soil and you need a little bit of a higher pH, you might bring in a little bit of soil here. We do free pH tests. So before you plant in the spring, you might remember, oh yeah, I used that as my porch pot for my fresh greens, and it might change the pH. It can do it pretty quickly, you'd be surprised. And pines and conifers all alike like a lower pH and will make the soil a lower pH. All right, let's see, I think we see, got a couple comments, so let me go through those real quick before I get started on this one. Because I see somebody said my favorite is for fragrance is Scotch pine. So Scotch pine is a great one, and we do carry some Scotch pine, I believe. I'll have to check on that for you, but I'm pretty sure we do have Scotch pine. Really good fragrance, you're right. Let's see, what about gold mop? Gold mop I love, it's one of my absolute favorites. I should have cut off some before I came in here and I forgot to, but gold mop is a great option. I don't carry gold mop typically as a cut green, but we do have them, of course, for sale, and a lot of people grow them in this area, so it's a pretty easy one to get locally. And ask a neighbor, ask a friend if you can go and take a couple cuttings. It doesn't take a lot, add a lot of different texture and good contrast. Oh, thank you, Jenna. Appreciate the comment. Let me say, I love the idea of using the root ball as a base. Pokey stick level, yep. All right, so let's see, let's get back to the final one. So again, I'm using this plastic pot to keep it a little bit lighter weight because it's gonna be a big one. And I wanna make it kind of big and huge and really, really cool looking. And I wanna add as much as I possibly can to give you lots of different ideas. So we got lights, we got lots of different thoughts here. I will get to all of them. But I always start with my base. And this time, I'm gonna use Fraser fir. Fraser fir, we have a lot of here at the garden center. That's our main cut tree, is Fraser fir, but there's lots of different options out there. Maybe you've got a friend or a neighbor. If you don't do a cut tree, maybe you got a friend or a neighbor that is using cut trees, that has a cut tree. Tell them if you can grab a couple greens from them, or they can grab a couple when they get their cut tree and maybe share them. Or, of course, you can purchase these from the garden center here. So I'm gonna really fill this up with a lot of this. Now, I'm gonna do this slightly different. This is gonna be kind of my base, but I've got kind of a surprise that I wanna add to the end. Well, I'll let the surprise go. I'm gonna do kind of a bird-centric idea here. You've probably seen me, maybe you've seen me do this before. If not, you will love this. It's a super, super cool idea. Keeps it kind of rusticy, keeps it kind of nature-based, and I love incorporating nature into even a very natural thing like a porch pot. So I'm gonna have a birdhouse that I've got right here. Really pretty white birdhouse, very kind of rustic, very cool looking. It's actually says school on it, but it's a great little birdhouse, and I'm gonna keep this kind of in that theme and the idea of birds. So I've got another little bird ornament that I'm gonna use, and we're gonna attach this to a branch that's gonna be lit. So stay tuned, watch this. This is gonna be really fun. We're gonna add a lot. So because I've got the idea to do that, I don't want to fill up a whole lot in the front of my container here. That's where my birdhouse is gonna sit. It's gonna sit right here on the top, on the edge of the pot. It probably will actually hang over the pot a little bit. So we'll see what happens when we get to that point. But really easy, just taking the Fraser fir and just cutting a bunch of it. Because I'm gonna need a fair amount to really kind of fill in. And I like Fraser fir because it typically has a bit of an arch to it. So it's got kind of this plateaued look, but if you see, if I turn it this way, it's got a little bit of a curve. And if you put it upside down, you get that silvery color. And then if you turn some pieces up, you get that nice green color. So I'm gonna use it, and I'm gonna do it both ways. I'm gonna use it down to kind of create a little bit of overhang effect to really fill in my pot. And I'm also going to use some of it upright so I get that really pretty green color. And really, again, I can't stress enough how much I don't want you to overthink it. I just want you to stuff it in there because you can always come back and fix it later. And honestly, you don't have to go fast, but the less you think about it and the quicker you just kind of roll through it, I think the prettier they are because you're not kind of trying to stick too much to a game plan. And so it's nice to just kind of wing it a little bit and let it fly and see what happens, because I think you'll be really, really amazed at what you can do when you don't think about it too much. A little bit of planning. I need a fair amount. This is what I want to use. These are my favorites. That goes a long way. But when it gets down to actually creating it, just cut it and stuff it in there. Really, really simple. If you go and look at any images of fresh porch pots, It's going to look super, super amazing. You're going to love all the different ideas. It's where I get a lot of inspiration to do some of these. And if you think about it, they probably didn't think about it too much either. They probably just popped it in there. And we're going to make mistakes. We're going to run into some things that we don't maybe like as much. Like, I don't really like how that piece is working. It's a little bit too big of a chunk. And I really want to keep this front open here. Okay, there we go. All right, I think just a little bit more, just as my base. I like that. That looks good. All right, so let's see. That's my nice kind of spread out. I'm keeping the center pretty hollow. I'm keeping the front bare because that is where my house is going to sit when we get done with this. It's going to look really, really cool. All right, so now we got to think about different textures. We've also got to think about height and what we want to use as our centerpiece. All the different things that we're going to use. I love this pine. So this is actually this loblolly pine. Got a couple different things I want to use here. So I've used the Magnolia, I've used the Boxwood. All right, so this pine looks kind of shabby, which I like. I think it's cool. I don't need big pieces of it. I just want a little bit of filler here with it. So I'm going to take and cut that back some. This might be one of those rare cases where I don't use the entire piece of the branch, but I'm just going to add some texture to it. So I just like that. That's perfect. Just a little bit of that filler texture. Nice. You see how that's coming together there? It's just a little bit of filler, different texture, different look. This is really cool pine. Perfect. This is exactly what I wanted, was just a little bit of that filler. So I've got my spiller kind of trailing plant, cut green, the Fraser fir, and then I've got this pine, which is acting kind of as a filler, kind of give me a little bit of a backdrop. Now I really want to go tall and go crazy. So I've got a couple different things that we could use, but this is going to be my favorite right here. I want to add lights. I love adding lights to the holidays. There's so many different ways to use them, whether it's Invisilights, micro LED lights, but these are these LED twig lights. So these are really cool. This is very much a nature-inspired light. So it's LED, it's indoor or outdoor. You get 3 sets of twigs. So you get 3 branches here. I'm going to take this and unwind it so you can see. Comes with these little spikes too. So just rubber band, take the rubber band off. And then I'm going to go ahead and plug these in so you can see. Now you get 3 branches. It's wired, and they've got built-in LED lights to them. So this is going to look really, really cool and very easy. They're separated by about, I don't know, maybe 8 to 10, maybe 12 inches of wire. So each one's separated by 12 inches, and you got a pretty good long cord here that we can use, and we'll plug that in so you can see what these look like. There we go. So now you can see how pretty that light is. And all you got to do is take these spikes, stick them on the bottom. And this is like a bare branch with lights built right into them. So they're super easy. I love these because they're flexible. So I'm going to take this wire that leads to my power outlet and guide it through the back, because this is definitely going to be a little bit of a one-sided setup here. And then I'm just going to poke these in. I want to get some spread on them, so I want to kind of get them like that. That's almost perfect. Look at that. Now, these are all flexible, so I can move them. And so I'm going to take these, and I'm going to make them look like branches. So I can put a little bend in them. Really, really easy. I think there's 72 lights on this, and they come in lots of different colors too. They come in white, they come in blue, red, green. They even come in a white, that one I did grab. I don't know if you can see this, but this is a warm white light on a white twig. So you can see there's twigs in there. Got that really pretty white color. So again, kind of emulating that birch a little bit. Florists love these. They're great for decorating. It's 60 lights. Sorry, so 60 lights. But because they're completely flexible and I can change and manipulate them, you're going to see how that's going to really help me here towards the end. Now I want to go big. I don't want to kind of skimp on this one. So I really want to add this deodar cedar. Just to add some greenery. I want it almost to look like a forest inside my combo pot. I'm going to push this off to the side a little bit so you can see me a little bit better. And then we'll just cut this twine off. I've got a good, probably, I don't know, maybe 5 pieces here. Let's see, I might use my knife to get through this. Always cut away from you. All right. So here we go. I've got all these big pieces. Now this is going to be another part of my thriller here. So I'm going to add these kind of in amongst these lights. Perfect. Again, don't think, just do it. Go for it. You can always change this. We're not planting anything. It's all going to die, unfortunately, because it's cut greens. But the plant that we got it from, the host plant, is perfectly fine and happier because we used it. Trust me. So I want to make sure, yeah, this is Blue Atlas cedar. So Blue Atlas cedar is really pretty because it's got this very kind of floppy habit to it. And this one's a nice big piece. I'm going to try and change this a little bit. Maybe we'll switch this. We'll put this piece over here. There we go. And this one's kind of going all over the place. So you can see this was obviously hanging off the end. I do want it to be a little bit more vertical. So let's see, how can I manipulate this? I think I'm going to take these 2 side branches off because those are really trailing. And then we'll make a little bit of an angle cut on this bottom branch. So I got a nice spike, and then we'll add that in there. Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Just get it down into the soil. All right, perfect. So now we've got really a show-stopping piece. I mean, I could stop now, but let's see what else we can add. Before we go any further, what I want to do is I want to get it into the ceramic pot because I think it's important to kind of make sure we're in a right color scheme and everything that we're using is what we want. So I'm going to move this off to the side real quick. And I'm going to pull up my big ceramic pot here. Now you can get super fancy with this plug and I could run it through the bottom holes if I needed to for the lights. But all I'm going to do is put a brick in here as a little bit of a riser. So I've got a little bit of a riser there. And then I'm going to take and drop this in like an insert. And there we go. Super, super easy. Don't worry if you see a little bit of your black plastic pot, that's okay. We're going to hide that. We can always add more if we need to. If it's rocking a little bit, we can fix that too. This one is. So I'm actually going to take a little bit of twig here, just because it needs a little bit of a push on the other side so it doesn't drop over. There we go. All right, now what else do we want to add? I love, 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 love pine cones. Pine cones are super, super easy to use. Now let's look at size here and think about size in perspective. That's actually not bad. It's a pretty big container. So that's not bad right there. Now, this is what's really cool. There's lots of different ways to do this. I don't need the tag. So we're going to take this tag off. Lots of different ways that you can get this in there. I mean, you could literally just stick it in there and you can probably wedge it in there and it'll hold. Look at that. I didn't even try and it worked. But I want to make sure that it's going to withstand the outdoor elements. So I'm actually going to take a piece of the Fraser fir that I used on my outskirt because this is going to be on the outskirt. And I'm going to attach it to this. Pine cones are really easy to use because if you got wire, just take a piece of wire and run it through the bottom, probably 1/4 of it somewhere. And it just goes right through and then you can just twist it off on the back side of it. And there you go. Look at that. Looks like it's floating, right? But it's on a piece of wire. Then I can take it and attach it to this piece of greenery that then I'm going to insert into my container here. So all I got to do is just take it and get it positioned how I want it. And then just use this wire to tie it in. Then, always kind of be thinking, I don't need this. I left it on there because I needed to make sure I had enough, but now that I know how it's going to get positioned, I can go ahead and cut my green off at the base where I need to, and then I can insert this in. And that's going to give me something that now my pine cone is securely attached to. And if you feel like you need to make it more secure, make it more secure. I can always take another piece, because it does feel like it's a little floppy. I can take another piece and just run it right through. So I know this might be hard to see, but I'm going to run it through the probably middle part of this, and then I can just attach it right to the back of my LED twig light here. That's adding a lot of show. I love the way it looks right now. So I've got that pine cone in there. Again, I always like to do 3s if I can. I love to stay in my odds. I'm not going to do it this time just for the sake of time, but I'm going to add one more to the other side here. And I probably would put one on the back too. So normally I would probably take it and put it on one into the back here, just in case, just to kind of help hide it completely. I'm going to cut this just because I don't need all of it, but then I will mount it on here the way that I want it. So we'll try and do this real quick. I know you can't quite see what I'm doing here. All right, so I'm just going to run this through. This time I'm not going to do one at the bottom. I'm going to just do it just right through the middle, because that actually worked really well on that one. See, I just learned something new. I always wire my pine cones to the bottom. But this time, because I really want it to stick up like that, I'm going to do it right through the top. See? Now it doesn't flop at all. Perfect. And then, do I need to cut this anymore? I probably don't need this piece right here, just to give myself enough stem to get down in there. And then we're going to add this to this other side here. Perfect. And then you just position your pine cone the way you want it, and you're good to go. Okay, so now let's look at this. I do want that pine cone to, I want it to look just like this if I can, but I'm not going to be too picky. There we go. Looks pretty good. All right, now for texture, for look, for a different kind of idea, I'm going to add my birdhouse in there. So there we go. Trying to see what you're seeing. So that looks pretty good. Make sure that it's nice and stable. I like that, looks good. And then for a little bit of pop of color, a bird has flown in and wants to get into the home. And of course, here in Virginia, we love our cardinals. So I'm going to take this cardinal and position them on a branch over here. And what I can do is, because these branches are movable, I can put it splayed out like that so that I can clip my little cardinal on it. And there we go. And then maybe he's got a little friend. So maybe we've got just this one other little cardinal friend that popped in. And let's see, I've got a little bit of a broken branch here. I don't like the look of that. And maybe let's see if this is sturdy enough. Instead of putting it on the LED lights, we're going to put the little friend on this branch right here. Perfect. All right. So add a little bit of that. I could add some ribbon for color, maybe a bow tied on top of the birdhouse. But I really like it nice and simple like that. Super, super easy. It's got light. These are indoor or outdoor LED lights. The birdhouse is made, it's a rustic kind of birdhouse. It's made out of actual old farmhouses from Illinois. So it's a kind of a really cool story behind it too. And you can use the birdhouse later. Maybe you'll get a feathered friend to kind of nest in there during the winter months. And then you can move it. But this is a great option. And this would look cool all winter long. Doesn't have to be Christmas related. Doesn't have to be holiday related. This would look good out on my front porch all winter long. I love this idea. I love to use different things and different ideas. Think outside the box. You can use artificial, you can use lifelike, you can use fresh. I encourage you to use fresh and use nature. I think you'll really enjoy all of the different things that you can do. Think outside the box, think and look around your home. Just look around your home and look in nature and see all the different things that you can do. So we'll position this one over here. Terracotta always looks great. You've got this great one, and then we've got this nice little white one that we can use inside our home. So I'll part through here and I'll see if there's any other questions. I hope you all enjoyed this. Use your fresh greens. It's a lot of fun. I purchased an air plant from there, so does it need misting? Yes, Deborah, air plants do need misting. If you're growing them in a bathroom or near your sink, your kitchen sink, you get a fair amount of humidity there, but I do love to mist your air plants every once in a while. Even not a bad idea is to soak them in water, so just take a cup of water, drop it into a cup of water for about 30 minutes, and that'll last you a good amount of time, probably somewhere around 4 to 5 days, but misting daily is not a bad idea either. Price on the Twig Lights, great question. They are $49.99. You get the set of 3. It's a great deal because almost always they're on sale. So if you check out our email, if you come into the store, you're pretty much always going to get a good deal on these. So we've got a lot of them in stock right now. It's a great idea to use for your front porch, for your porch pots. Should these pots be watered? It's a great question, Sally. Outside, yes. We're going to probably water. You probably can't water it too much outside, so you don't really have to worry too much about how much you water. I've got the drainage hole, so I don't have to worry about that. If you don't have a drainage hole, watch your watering. You don't want the water to get stagnant and old, but if it's an outside pot and you're fine with watering it, you can water it somewhere around every 3 to 4 days, probably twice a week is plenty, especially with the temperatures we're seeing right now, somewhere in the mid-50s to mid-60s with a little bit of wind. We haven't had a lot of rain. Keep it moist. Once you get to about a week out from Christmas, you can probably forget it. Now, if you want this one to last all the way through the winter, keep watering it. And if things start to fade on you, you can rip them out and pop in new ones. Super, super easy. Inside, so something like this that I might have on my interior, then I will probably water somewhere around, I don't know, probably once a week. The moisture is not going to evaporate very quickly. Now, when you first do it, you might see that your greens are sucking up a lot of moisture, and therefore you will have a little bit more watering that you'll have to do initially, but typically indoor plants, because we don't have sun, we don't have evaporation, we don't have all of those different things that are happening as quick inside, you probably will water less inside. But great question. Sorry, I missed what you use to keep greens fresh. Well, as soon as I cut them, I put them in water, but I use wilt-proof. Wilt-proof, we dip our greens, so we'll get the concentrate, which you can also purchase here. You can take your concentrate and make a batch and then dip all your fresh greens in it. That's a great way of getting it all the way around it. But the ready to use is very, very easy to use if you've got a smaller little project. So if you're doing something like this, I probably wouldn't build it first. I would probably spray all my greens first. Basically what it does is it coats the plant and it prevents transpiration, which is the loss of moisture through the leaves. Plants do that naturally. It's a natural thing. So you don't want to lose the moisture out of the leaves through transpiration and if you use wilt-proof, it prevents that from happening. So a great thing. You can also use it around some of your plants, like Chindoviburnum, Boxwoods, Rhododendron, that have a lot of moisture loss in the winter season and get a lot of leaf damage from it. So wilt-proof can be used on the garden as well as fresh greens. There's also Prolong, which you can mix into water, soak your plants in that for a while. It absorbs it, keeps the moisture, it makes the plant, the cut, on the cut green absorb more moisture. So there's another option. But I usually soak them in water and then use wilt-proof. It's a great fail-safe way to keep your greens fresh as long as possible. All right, I think I got everybody's questions. I hope everybody has a great day. I hope you go out and try to make one of these yourself. It's super, super easy. As you can see, I did this very quickly and just kind of ran right through it. And I didn't even think about it too much because if I made a mistake, I can always fix it later. So I hope you can come see us here at McDonald Garden Center. Come and check us out. We've got lots of fresh greens in stock right now. Decorate your home for the holidays with fresh greens. Bring that aroma inside. Use it outside. Use what nature offers. It's a great thing that you can do. And we hope to see you soon here at McDonald Garden Center. If I don't see you, have a happy holidays. Check us out the next couple weeks for our last 2 webinars before the end of the year. Everybody have a great day. See you later.